Welcome to the Shir Lukot Sichos Chelek Yud Ches Matos Aleph. This is a very fascinating Sicha because on the one hand it seems to deal with a specific Rashi which is somewhat technical in nature, but on the other hand, if we listen in, we're going to hear the message that there is no spiritual war versus physical war with the Yid. There's no war for the spirit, for the soul of the Jew versus the body of the Jew, but as a matter of fact, the war against the spirit is the war against the physical Yid. We're going to also understand what are the tactics that the Yetzer Hara and the Ummah Solam use to engage the Yidden in the war in the spirit and to bring them down when a Yid is vulnerable, when their spirit is vulnerable, and ultimately the deep connection that exists between the Eibishter and the Yid. Some background. Our Sicha is based on Moshe's anger and frustration and rebuke to the leaders of the war against Midian when they return from that war and they have not killed the woman, they've allowed the woman to live as they standardly did when they went to war. But in this case, Moshe is upset at them, and we're going to talk about that in a moment. But first, a little bit of context. In Parshas Chukas, the Yidden asked Sichon for permission to pass through his land, the land of Amori. Sichon denies the Jewish people permission, and he comes out to war. The Yidden go out, they meet him at war, and they conquer the entire Sichon and the 60 cities of Sichon. Shortly thereafter, they're traveling, and Og, the king of Bashan, comes to war against the Jews. Og, the massive giant, lifts an entire mountain the size of the Jewish camp above his head, and Moshe miraculously kills Og. At this point, the beginning of Parshas Balak, the king of Moab, is afraid of the approaching Jews. He's afraid of the Jews around him, and he says, if Sichon and Og, the two great powers of the region, the two who we all paid taxes to, who we all supported in order to protect us, weren't able to stand against the Jews, what are we going to do? How can we stand? He is very, very afraid, and he comes up with a tactic that instead of going to a physical war, he's going to try a spiritual war, and he hires Wilhelm to curse the Jewish people. Wilhelm, of course, in the famous story, tries 3 times to curse the Jewish people, and each time incredible brachas come out, at which point Balak says, go home, go home. Right before Bilam goes home, Bilam turns to Balak and he says, Lecha i'atzecha. Listen, I will give you advice. I will give you advice. What is the advice? Says Rashi there in Parshas Balak, Lecha i'atzecha, I'm going to give you advice. Elikeyam shel eila soynazimo. The God of these people hates promiscuity. And if you engage them in promiscuous behavior, then you'll be able to win over them. And Rashi says there, as it's said in the Gemara in Chelek in the end of last parak of Sanhedrin. And then Bilam goes on and he says his entire prophecy all about the coming of Mashiach, the end of Elayat, and what the Jewish people are going to do to the Moabites at the end of time with the coming of Mashiach and the beautiful prophecy. The king of Moab listens to the advice, and in a very in a real scheme, they get the Jewish people to engage in promiscuity, and tragically, Bilam was correct. A plague ensues, and 24,000 Jews fall in the plague. In Parshas Matos, Hashem instructs Moshe to instruct the Yidden to go to war against the Midianites to take vengeance for the Jewish people. Moav and Midian were involved in this war. Both the girls of Moav and Midian were involved in promiscuity, and Hashem instructs that we go to war against Midian, not against Moav. Rashi discusses because Rus would come out, but ultimately Hashem instructs that a war to take vengeance from Midian take place. Moshe instructs every Shevet to supply 1,000 soldiers. They go out to war. The war is led by Pinchas. In the war, they kill all 5 kings and Bilam, and they take the woman captive, as is the standard operation, standard way that they went to war. They did not kill the woman. They took them captive. And here is our pasuk. It's when Moshe sees, when Moshe goes out and he sees he sees the woman back, the woman have been taken captive. Vayiktzef Moshe al Pekudei Achoyim. This is in the third aliyah of Parshas Matos. It's Perek Lamed Aleph Pasuk Yidal. Moshe gets upset at the leaders of the war, and he says, "Vayomer alei Moshe." Moshe says, "Hachayisim kol nekeva." You allowed all the women to live. And now Moshe says as follows: Hein heina hayu lebnei Yisrael. These were the problem for Bnei Yisrael. Bidvar Bilam, by the word of Bilam, limsar mal ba'Hashem, to cause them to go astray and to sin against God. Al dvar per, with regard to the matter of pa'er, because ultimately the Jewish people don't only engage in promiscuity, but they also engage in idolatry in the service of pa'er. Vatehi amagefa ba'das Hashem, and there is, and they caused the plague to come in the Jewish community and in Hashem's congregation. And Hashem Moshe instructs that all the women who are of age to and are able to engage in this promiscuous behavior, that are of age of cohabitation, should be put to death. Says Rashi, Moshe said, these are the women that are the problem, midvar Bilam, by the word of Bilam. Says Rashi, what was the word of Bilam? Says Rashi, Amar lahem, Bilam said to them, Afilu ata machnisim kol hamoines shabaylam, even if you are going to gather all of the armies of the world, ein atam yecholna, even were you to gather all the armies of the world, you wouldn't be able to overpower the Jewish people. Shema merubim atam min hamitzriyim. Are you more numerous? Seemingly, are you more than the Egyptians? Are you more than the Egyptians? Shahayu sheish meis echad bachor. The Egyptians had 600 chosen chariots. Bayu. So Bilam says, come. Come. I'll give you advice. What's the advice? Elohim shel elu seinazimu. Their God hates promiscuity, v'chulu, etc. Kedeisa b'chelek, like the Gemara says in Chelek, ubesifri, and in Sifri. Now, what does the Gemara say in Chelek? The Gemara says in Chelek that in the last chapter of Masechta Sanhedrin, there's a long exposition on all of the brachas and the blessings that Bilam pronounced, and then when he gets up to this pasuk on the pasuk that talks about the Eitzah, he says, "Iyatzecha, l'cha iyatzecha, come, I will give you advice." So the pasuk says that what was the advice? The advice was that God hates promiscuity, and then the Gemara goes into a whole scheme of how they engage the Jewish people in the promiscuous behavior. Says the Gemara, Osalem Kloyim, they made booths, Mehar Chelek at Beis HaYeshimos, for a whole road from Har Chelek to Beis HaYeshimos, the entire journey, or this whole long road, they made booths. And what was in these booths? So the Gemara previously had told us that Bilam said for some reason the Jewish people liked linen. They liked linen clothes. And they would, if we can engage them in the sale of linen clothes, we would be able to overpower them. So what? How did they do this? What they did is they put these promiscuous women outside of the booths were older women, younger women were in the inside. And then it would be and when the Jewish people ate and drank and were happy, so and they went out into the marketplace to walk. So they had a whole shtick. So the elder woman would try to sell them these linen garments, and then the younger one would call out from inside the booth and sell it at a reduced discount, luring them inside. They would come in for the better price. The violet there was wine. They would give them wine, and they would then get them to serve pa'ar and be promiscuous, deny Moshe Rabbeinu, and the whole story. That's the Gemara in Chelek that Rashi refers us to. Ube Sifri, and Rashi says, and in the Sifri. Now, seemingly, the Sifri that Rashi is talking about is the Sifri on this pasuk, which says that the same thing. What was the Dvar Bilam? What was Bilam's words? Basically, what Rashi told us. Bilam's words were that you're never going to be able to conquer them, even all of the nations of the world. But the Rebbe tells us, I'm just going to give it away here, the Rebbe tells us that we're actually not referring to this Sifri. We're actually referring to a different Sifri. That's the Rashi of our pasuk. So now, the Rebbe asks 7 questions. 7 questions. First of all, why is the whole speech relevant? Why is the whole speech? Bilam gave Bilam gave a whole speech. What was Bilam? And Rashi says, what was the speech? Even if you're going to gather everybody, you're not going to be able to conquer them. Are you more than the Egyptians? He gives them a whole pep talk. Rather, what's the whole speech relevant? Just say, Bilam advised that they bring in promiscuous behavior. Second of all, if the speech is relevant, why does Rashi say it here? Why didn't Rashi put it in earlier in Parshas Balak, when in the context Bilam said, I will give you advice. So say the whole speech over there. There Rashi said, I'll give you advice. God doesn't like promiscuous behavior. Why is the speech over here? Third of all, Bilam said, even if you're going to gather all the nations of the world, are you going to be more than the Egyptians? Of course you'll be more. One second. Of course you'll be more than the Egyptians. Third question. The fourth question is, Rashi says, the Egyptians are 600 chosen chariots. There was much more than 600. 600 leads. But there was much more than 600. It says, in all the chariots of Egypt. So why limit it to 600? It's not that much. Also, why does Rashi send us to Kedisa B'Chelek? First of all, most of what it says in the Gemara, in Chelek, in other words, I mean, the bottom line, it says in the Sifri. What if they tell the whole story, how they did it? They put women, and this, and they made one older, one young one. Well, why does Rashi have to send us to Chelek to tell us the whole story? Why is that important? And lastly, the Sifri seemingly says what Rashi says. So put the Sifri first. In other words, say Kedisa b'Sifri, like we learned in Sifri, and then say if you want to tell the rest of the story, you can look in Chelek. 7 questions on this Rashi that seemingly, essentially, what's this whole speech all about? And now, the Rebbe reinterprets the Rashi and gives us an entire new appreciation for this whole scenario of what's going on over here. This whole scheme of Bilam and this whole discussion that's happening. You see, what's going on? The warriors return, and in standard operating procedure, They allowed the woman to live. So what does Rashi say? What does Moshe say? He says, hey, these were the ones who were the problem. Bidvar Bilam, by the word of Bilam. Not like Rashi, not like the pasuk said before, L'cha yatzecha, the advice of Bilam, the word of Bilam, the speech of Bilam. Bilam gave a whole speech. You didn't listen to his speech. What was his speech? His speech, if you understand, was that even if you're going to gather all of the armies of the world, you're not going to win over them. The goal is to destroy the Jewish people. But you're not going to be able to destroy them in your regular military manner. You're not going to be able to destroy them just through gathering the armies of the world. How are we going to destroy them? We're going to destroy them through the promiscuous behavior. We're going to destroy them by using the woman. So here, if we're going to war against those who are the problem of the warriors here are not those holding the guns. The warriors here are those infiltrating with the promiscuous behavior. These women, they are the problem. Now, what was the whole speech? So Rashi tells like this. The speech began and says, physically, we cannot win the war. Even if you're going to gather all the nations of the world, you're not going to win. Doesn't bring proof to that. We know that already from Sicha and from Oig. These are the superpowers. They don't even stand against the Jews. That is obvious at this point. What happened was Balak came up with a new strategy. Let's try a spiritual war. And Balak hires Bilam to curse the Jewish people. That doesn't work. Balak sends Bilam packing. But Balak has in mind to go look for other spiritual powers. So here Bilam says, wait a second. Even spiritually you cannot win. Are you greater? Are you more significant than the 600 chosen chariots of the Egyptians? Who are these 600 chosen chariots? Now, if you remember, one of the plagues was the plague of pestilence, the plague of Dever. The animals all died. So how was there any animals to chase the Jewish people into the Red Sea? Well, the animals were, Rashi tells us, that only those in the field died, and the God-fearing, remember, God-fearing Egyptians, the righteous Egyptians, they are the ones who put their animals in the homes, and these are the animals that chase the Jews into the sea. So here the 600 chosen chariots are not just the chosen because they're best warriors. These are the 600 greatest God-fearing Egyptians. The chosen God-fearing. In other words, even those who have spiritual powers, they also can't get the Jewish people down. You're not going to be greater than them. Spiritual power also is not going to win against the Jewish people. How can you win against the Jewish people? Says Bilam, Bayu. Come close and I'll give you advice. And this is a secret. We have to make sure it doesn't get out. Make sure the Jewish people don't understand the strategy. What's the strategy? What's the secret? The secret is if we can get them to be promiscuous, because Elikem Shalelu Sainazima. That's how we can destroy the Jewish people. Rashi says, as it says in Chelek, the Gemara in Chelek, and in Sifri. Why does he add the Chelek, the Gemara and Sifri? So the Gemara, Rashi adds, because as I shared with you, the Gemara goes at great length to understand what is the entire scheme that there was made over here, the entire scheme that was contrived. Because remember, what type of advice was this? get them to be promiscuous. For 40 years in the desert, we don't find promiscuity. As a matter of fact, even in Egypt, Rashi says there was one problem, there was Shlomis Bas Divri, one promiscuous person in all of Egypt, of the Jewish people in Egypt at the time. So suddenly, on a whim, the Jewish people are going to engage in this behavior. So Kedisa B'Chelek, Rashi says, like it says in Chelek, that an entire scheme was contrived and was made up of how to engage the Jewish people from, they thought that they're going shopping for linen, and we're going to get them in with old, young wine, mice. Oh, it was an entire plan. So now we already understand the Jewish people were ensnared in a plan. But Rashi has another question one can ask. He alludes to is that, okay, so the plan was premised on the fact that when the Jewish people would eat and drink, they would go to the malls and they would go down the streets of Moav, and over there they would ensnare them in this whole trap. Seemingly, here the Jewish people just experienced the incredible downfall of Oig, the incredible miracle of Oig, the incredible miracles that they saw how the Amorites went down. So weren't they in a great state of elation, a great state of holiness? Why would they be going down the streets of Moav malls shopping for between the women for stuff? Why would they be doing that in the first place? So Rashi says, look at the way the Sifri tells the story. Not our Sifri, not the Sifri that says what was Bilam's advice. Earlier in Parshas Balak, there's a Sifri that tells the story that the Gemara in Chelek says, but it adds one detail, or it adds a little bit of context. What's the context? The Sifri says that when the Jewish people won the war against Oig and against Sichain, there was so much spoil of war, so much booty, says the Sifri, that they started to just cast away garments and vessels. They just stopped breaking. Animals, they were chopping up and getting rid of it. It was like they were completely mistreating it. It meant nothing to them. They only were looking for, where's the gold? Where is the silver? In other words, the abundance that they were given actually made it caused them to grow fatty, to grow materialistic, to become a little bit crazed about the materiality that they all had just gotten. And that was the context for them suddenly going out and walking among the Moav booths and malls and who knows what, because their great abundance and the great bracha of materialism actually made them material. And the Sifri actually states that clearly when it tells the same story as Chelek. So that's the Sifri that Rashi is referring to. So again, the message that Moshe was imparting is this is the war, and the warriors is the spiritual war, is the infiltration, is the promiscuity. That is the war to end the Jewish people, is being conducted in this manner. How do the Jewish people get entrapped in the war? Because it's, like we say, there's a lot of entrapment. It doesn't happen simply. What's the context for it? The context is that the Jewish people have become materialistic. From all the bracha that Hashem gave them, they became materialistic. And that's how it all weaves together and ends in this very tragic way that ultimately 24,000 Jewish people pass away in the plague. And this is what Moshe is here telling the Jewish people. We have to stop. We have to understand what the war is. We have to put the warriors to death. Of course, there's a message. The Rebbe's father points out that when Hashem instructed Moshe to go to war against Midian, Hashem said, "Loses nikmas bnei Yisrael." They should take nekoim nikmas bnei Yisrael, take a vengeance for the Jewish people, for the lost Jewish people, for the damage of the Jewish people from the Midianites. When Moshe tells the Yidden to go to war, he says you're going to go to war to take vengeance for the honor of Hashem that was suffered at the hands of the Midianites. And the Rabbi's father says, because the Eibishter cares about the honor of the Jewish people, and the Jewish people care about the honor of Hashem. So the Rebbe says, why here? It's a beautiful teaching, but why here? How is it relevant to Midian and to the war against Midian? Because it was Midian, and it was Bilam's plan, and the way that Bilam spelled it out, that made it so clear. Bilam himself understood that there's no separation between the Jew and the Eibishter. And in other words, we will not win the Jews physically. The way that we're going to win the Jews physically is if we can actually drive a wedge between the Jew and the spirit. We can bring down the spirit. So it's Bilam who understands that in order to attack the Jews physically, in order to bring down the physical Jew, we have to anger the Eibishter. And now we have the Eibishter concerned about the fact that they're trying to attack the Yidden, and the Yidden concerned the fact that they're trying to anger the Eibishter. That's over here so clear, and that's the message that we get from this story. And Rashi tells us that one who stands against the Yid stands against the Eibishter. And we see that that's so clear over here. And that's why we want to understand the whole Dvar Bilam, the whole message of Bilam, to understand the whole concept of the whole context of the importance of taking vengeance against Midian and understanding what they stand for. The Yid and the Eibishter and that inseparable bond and trying to make separation over there. Thank you.